So thank you very much for having time for this interview from the US. And you're an entrepreneur, you're an actress, and you're an author of the book Training to Imagine. So could you shortly introduce yourself? Who are you? What are you doing professionally?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start by saying it's funny to think of myself as an entrepreneur. It's exactly the opposite of what I ever thought I'd be. I started out as an actor, and the part of that I liked least was the looking for work part, which is sort of what an entrepreneur is, right? Is making work. So I don't quite know how that happened. But somehow improvisationally, I found myself running a business and spending a lot of my time having to make work for myself and other people. So yeah, but that is what in fact I do. I have two businesses really in one. One of them is an improvisational theater company called the Mop and Bucket Company that I run with my husband, who is the artistic director and really makes that part of the business go. A few years ago, we bought an old 100-year-old firehouse in upstate New York in a town called Schenectady, and turned it into an improvisational theater. In between it being a firehouse and being an improv theater, it was an illicit striptease club that was featured on the Jerry Springer Show, which is a big, wild talk show here in the States. And so it was very famous for that, and then was shut down for illegal activities, and then sat dormant for 20 years, and we bought it. So it's got a great history for an improv theater. And we do shows weekly and classes, and now in this moment, we're continuing to do that online while it sadly sits dormant. And then the other half of the business is an applied improvisation training and consulting and coaching company. And we apply improvisation globally with leaders and teams and organizations, helping people to expand their performance range in whatever context they do that.
So I know many actors and actresses, and I often hear the mindset like, please, entrepreneurship is not my thing, business is not my thing, I want to do arts. So how did you change from being, a pure artist to apply some skills also for non-artists?
Yeah. Well, I guess what really is true is that I wasn't constitutionally actually meant to be an actor, I don't think. I didn't know this when I went to conservatory, but I think what I discovered was what drew me to being an actor was actually what ultimately made me an organizational psychologist. What I was interested in was connecting with other humans and being in an environment where people valued and practiced that, what connects people, how can we see and hear each other and connect with ourselves and express empathy and understand each other and figure out what makes humans tick, and how can we co-create and collaborate and feel valued for bringing all of ourselves authentically into a space together. And coming from a very hyper intellectual, left-brained, for want of a better word, family environment, the theater was the place where I felt like that was the culture where I was exposed to that. And so that's how I ended up being an actor. From scripted theater, traditional theater, I found my way into improv because my scripted theater teachers were saying, oh, you need to think less. And what they actually meant was you need to censor yourself less or judge yourself less. And improv improvisation was a way where I had people teaching me how to do that instead of just telling me to do it. So I discovered improvisation. And then my improv students lured me into the world of organizations. They said, I wish my teams at work were working the way we were working in class. I wish my boss at work was accepting my ideas and supporting me the way you are in class, or the way my improvisational partners are. So would you come and teach improv to my team or the leaders in my organization? And I said, sure, I'll do that, because I'm a starving actor and corporations have money. But I was a skeptic, I thought. So I went back to school and got a master's in organizational psychology, because I did still have this left brain intellectual desire for rigor. And very quickly, within, 6 weeks of being in that master's program at Columbia, I realized, there is something very profound that we take for granted as artists and improvisers that a lot of people are starved for and not exposed to, that organizations and just humans in general could benefit from. And this was early, mid to late 90s. So now I'm sure you all take for granted a lot of this work around creativity and communication, but it was not in the zeitgeist back in the early 90s. I had one class in creativity, one module on creativity in a survey course in my organizational development survey course in my organizational psychology program at Columbia. And there was one study by Teresa Mabile on creativity. And the moral of that story was that creativity is only an individual characteristic. There's no such thing as group creativity, was what I remember from that course. So we have come light years in that amount of time.
At the same time, there's still hardly no course on creativity at universities and schools, interestingly. So I think there's still a lot to do. Now, you said that that you were skeptical how to teach and train people in business, showing the skills of improvisation and arts. And I think nowadays there are still people sometimes skeptical, and they do not know how to apply these skills and why they should use that. What would be your answer why in management organizations people need the skills of improvisation?
Well, I don't think what we do is a metaphor. I think it's really literally, we are improvising all the time. We made a joke at the top that, we're going to have a conversation. It will be just like improv. Well, we are literally improvising right now. We're in a little improvisational scene. I don't know exactly what you're going to say. I literally don't know exactly what I'm going to say. And if we're doing it well, I'm listening and responding, and you're listening and responding. We're trying to make each other look good. I came out of my master's program at Columbia with all sorts of, jargon and language and philosophy. And I had a meeting with one of my early clients, Kaiser Permanente, which is a healthcare organization in California. And they wanted me to do a program on patient-physician communication skills. And I went in with this very fancy pitch about making the case for improvisation and physician-patient communication. And I finished, and one of the docs said, okay, but that's great, but how about just this idea that we're all improvising all the time? And I said, right, that too. And since then, that's sort of the way, my clients taught me, right? It's not rocket science. It's not complicated. Right? People, our clients know we have to be able to listen and receive. We need to be able to expand our range of how we show up and so that we have presence and we can hold the room. We need to be able to accept people's ideas and build with them rather than just be stuck in our own way of doing it. We have to be able to be flexible, right? And shift if something isn't exactly the way that we expected it to go in the moment, right? And people know this. We talk about it all the time. There's a billion leadership gurus talking about it. What pulling from improvisational theater does and using those activities does is give us a gym to work out the muscles. So really what applied improvisers are doing is just that, becoming the gym for working the muscles rather than just approaching it as knowledge or information.
So you're a gym instructor of improvisational skills.
Yes.
What kind of gym or improvisational gym do you offer? So is it like, come on, CEOs come to my workshop for a day and then you have the superpower that you gained after this day, or there are different concepts that you use?
Well, I think one of the important things that you just said is it come to my workshop for a day and then whatever. If you pull through the gymnasium metaphor, you'll understand the problem in what you just said, which is you can't go to a gym for a day and then be in shape, right? You don't take a tour and we say, here are the weights. Look, I've lifted weights, now I'm strong, right? It's a practice like yoga or running or playing the violin. So there are certain skills, mindsets, muscles, if you will, that improvisers have identified, or that, taken from the other end, that we've developed as organizational development professionals, that we say, these are things that will make us more effective. And there are exercises to work those muscles, and then you work them over time. So what we can do in a workshop with our clients is introduce them to, here are the muscles you want to exercise, here's the mindsets you want to shift, here's some tools for doing that. And then it's up to you, sometimes with our help, right? Sometimes we can create coaching circles or long-term engagements. Sometimes we put infrastructure in place, like building an on-site gym for them, where they help each other. But it's an ongoing practice. The specific skills that we work on, I'm sure you all have heard by now, right, are, I keep saying listening. It's the number one thing. We think of improvising as being, super clever or interesting or spontaneous even, but really the most important foundational one is being present, paying attention, receiving information, and then being willing to use whatever you receive. So listening, being present, being willing to be, courage is a muscle you can exercise by just sort of being willing to follow your impulse and take a risk, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, focusing on your partner instead of yourself. Like, these are the kinds of muscles we exercise. And then a whole suite of things around expanding your own performance range in terms of flexibility, presence.
Now it's interesting that you said listening. So before you said, some people say like, there are many skills that people already know of. And I guess listening, everyone says like, I can listen, I can watch, I can observe. So what is it that helps people to listen, I don't know, deeper or different or?
Yeah, one of our most popular programs or suite of programs are around listening. We're working with a global client right now, a big consulting firm that brought us in to work with their most senior partners about reconfiguring the conversations that they're having with their clients, because especially in this moment, this has always been true, but people are recognizing it right now, that we have to have different kinds of conversations and we need to engage in a different kind of way, right? The smarter you are, the more expert you are, the more there's the trap that you think that the way you can add value in a conversation is to show up with knowledge, right? And offering your content. And what these very senior consultants have realized is really they need to be showing up in these conversations, being able to receive and listen more deeply and with more nuance. So some of the things that we work on in these listening programs is what you're listening for. So in improv parlance, what kinds of offers can you get good at receiving? So we're not just receiving information and data, but also emotion. So what emotions am I receiving and listening for? What values am I hearing? So if someone says, and I think you may have done some of these activities with Barb Tint, who was with you. But so if someone tells me a story, what do I hear that you care about in there? What's important for you? What values am I hearing? Or what's your intention? Why are you telling me this story? What do you want me to do after you've told it? Or how do you want me to be receiving what you're telling me? So data, emotion, values, intention. How do we practice listening for those things? Another thing we practice is how we're listening. So am I listening to gather ammunition so that when it's my turn to talk, I can then disprove your argument? I know Dan Klein is with us, and he works over at Stanford. The design school at Stanford, started by David Kelly. David Kelly used to say, as an engineering, working in mechanical engineering over there, that he would get the smartest students in the world, right? They would come from all over the world, smartest people in the world, and they had been taught that being smart meant shooting holes in other people's ideas, as opposed to receiving those ideas and then saying, what can I build with? How can I use that idea? What can I add? Which is really just another way of saying yes and. So what can we listen for? How can we listen? And then the third thing that we work on is, who am I listening to? Which is just a way of saying, there's the person speaking, but I can also listen to myself. How can I listen to, receive, accept my own impulses, the voices in my head, my own intuition, and also the context or the room. So I'm listening to your question, also be receiving, how is this, if people, am I offering too much? Do I need to move on? Are they looking confused? Do I need to explain more? Who might be the other people out in the larger zeitgeist that might be listening later that I might need to add information for?
The world changed, as you know, and there's a lot of online communication now. How did that change regarding listening? So is it different? Is it more complicated to listening? Is it easier? What is your perspective on that?
I've spent the last 2 months thinking about this question a lot, and I've been sort of obsessed with what is not different right now. Maybe because there's so many conversations about what is different. It feels to me like a lot is not different. There's some logistical things are different, obviously, and some things have come to a head and are intense. And obviously for individual people, some things are very radically different, right? Some people have lost their jobs. Some people are dealing with deep loss in some ways. So I don't want to minimize that. But I think fundamentally, we over-rotate on the differences. And what fundamentally seems the same to me is we never knew what was going to happen tomorrow. We always had the choice to be present and in the moment or not. And we were always, certainly in the modern world, fighting with distraction. Many people that I've talked to have felt like this moment has made them go like, oh, I was completely overwhelmed and pulled in 60 different directions. So I think that what technology like this and having to relate like this does is highlight for us the ways that it's hard to be present and how tiring it is to have to focus. But it's not different, right? People say, there are all these articles that says Zoom is exhausting. And I think to myself, wow, well, I heard a lot of people complaining about having to be in meetings all day and how exhausting meetings were. I just think meetings are exhausting. And if you're doing it right, this space can be really energizing. Being with people and connecting with people and listening and supporting each other can be really lovely too.